you doing?
How am I doing?
Yeah.
I am currently 3-0 at the Battle Hardened.
Nice.
Hey everyone, welcome back to more Flesh and Bat, and today we are back from our little hiatus for the Portland Battle Hardened to kind of talk about the weekend, talk about results, and then kind of just share my thoughts on some more Zen stuff. So I was actually able to place in the top 8 of the Portland Battle Hardened, and this is kind of like the list I use. I wanted to kind of briefly kind of go through the list. I also like updated this completely with every single matchup. Which is normally something that I don't do for my like current updated Zen list, just because I think it's hard to keep track of. But I think this is like maybe like a good snapshot in time of how I guess I would sideboard into certain things. I'm probably not going to talk about all of these in this video, but I will talk about like some of like the upper echelon of kind of like sideboarding, and then kind of share my thoughts on like some specific matchups that I think are kind of interesting. Yeah, so let me quickly pull up my kind of like Swiss results and I'll kind of talk through those. All right, so these are my Swiss results, and we'll kind of just go through these each, I guess, round by round, kind of talk about the games and talk about, I guess, what happened. So, round one, I played in Aurora. I think this was a little bit of a newer player. I think they said they've only been playing for like 2 months, but they put up like a really good fight for only playing for 2 months. Basically, I think they had like a somewhat unoptimized like Aurora list. I think they only had like I don't think they had like a grasp. I think they had like Vex and Cool Hand or something like that. But they were able to output like a lot of damage, especially off the back of like two pretty early CLVs. Yeah, definitely a little bit of a scary matchup, even if you're playing against an unoptimized Aurora deck, just because like a lot of the cards, the Aurora runs are just that common anyways, like Ravenous Rabble, like Scar for Scar, etc. So like definitely a very scary Aurora list, even if it wasn't like fully put together. I think my opponent like played pretty well, so definitely a pretty close game, but I think I was able to just kind of like eke it out over just kind of early transcend and kind of like outvaluing over the course of the game. And then round two, I think I played against a Dawnblade Dory, and this was I kind of almost felt bad for this game because I think that they just drew pretty poorly. Basically, just didn't see any of their attack reactions. I think they only saw just like their warrior actions basically. And I kind of just denied reprise, blocked out everything, and like they basically like just couldn't do anything because I was like sitting on a reactant arsenal. So yeah, the Dawnblade Dory game went pretty well. I basically like transcended super early. I kept seeing transcend cards, and then the Dory just kind of folded from there. Especially after a certain point, I just didn't even need to block or care about counters just because I was outputting so much damage. So Dawnblade Dory, I don't think this matchup's actually that bad for Zen once you kind of like know the trick of the matchup, which is like when to block, when to not block. And I think that I do have like quite a bit of experience in that matchup. Next, let's talk about Ira. So this was, I think, just kind of like a more aggro Needles Ira. I don't think they were on like the super disruptive package of like 3x Weakest Link, 3x Amnesia, 3x Sensor. I think they were mainly only on CNCs, although I could be wrong. Actually, maybe they did have like a Weakest Link or something, but they weren't super like heavy into this disruption. I think they had like a mix of like the dagger synergy cards, like Cut Through, and kind of like some of the other kind of like dagger synergy cards. So Ira actually wasn't too bad. I basically, again, transcended super early, was able to kind of just outvalue over the course of the game, and then they basically had like I think there was like a 20 to 30 point lead at some point. So I felt pretty confident about the Ira matchup. It went, I think, pretty smoothly for me, and I think I did get hit by like a CNC at one point, but I think it was after I basically got them down to like 5 or something, so it didn't really matter. Next, let's talk about Sandscour Azalea. So this was against a former local, I think, Justin Salmon. So he's got a very nasty Sandscour list. If you don't know, I think Scanscour Azalea I think is a little bit tougher than normal Azalea, just because Sandscour is basically looking to recur the same Red and Ledger like 5 to 6 times, or I think it's probably even more than that, but basically recur Red and Ledger like 10 to 12 times throughout the course of the game, and then just kind of like keep sending damage at you. So I kind of basically just didn't see, or I had some like weird things line up. Like I think I had three chi in hand when I got hit by a battering bolt, and I think I had like there was some other weird stuff with this game, but I basically just kind of got a little bit high rolled by like battering bolts and red ledgers and remorseless. So this game was, I think, a little bit of a wash, but it was in round 4, so I guess not too bad, especially if we're trying to like close out. I think we need to get like 6-1 basically to qualify for top 8 guaranteed. A loss to round 4 is not incredibly terrible. So I got a Florian win. So this was in round 5. I think the matchup's still like pretty bad for Florian. Like you can definitely like as Florian, you can kind of like high roll Zen and like hit your disruption really well. But I don't think this Florian was really seeing that. And I think this was like another one of those games where you basically transcend super early and then transcend every turn of the game. So I was basically just able to like purely outvalue this Florian pretty much consistently. None of their disruption really lined up. I think they had like a felling of the crown for like 4 or whatever. And I think that Florian's still like not super favored into Zen just because like uh you just like can't really race super effectively. For what it's worth, I think this Florian was also running like a more aggro package than me. I think they were on like Gloom Veils and then also what was it? Or like Gloom Veils and the card that like the fusion card that like pings you by 1. Tegan will remember that card. But anyways, they're running like a bit of more aggressive package than I'm used to, where I normally expect a more defensive package. I don't know if that worked out super well for them. Next, in round 6, we have a Zen Mirror. So I think I actually went first in the Zen Mirror, which is always not ideal. But I think, manage to just kind of eke it out in terms of like transcending earlier, and I think a little bit more often my opponent. I think the Zen Mirror is still pretty cursed, just in terms of like uh, who goes first, who goes second. I think there's like a very, very big advantage to going second. But somehow I was actually able to win this going first. I think this is also against a former local, so I think it was a close game. Like I think it was like 2-1 or something at the end. So definitely not like a complete one-sided stomp, but I think I just barely got there in the end. Next, we'll talk about round 7, which was against Mario, and this was a win, but it wasn't really a win. It was like a very close game. So I kind of want to talk about this game because I think it's interesting, and I think that it's against a very good player. So we have a local named Thor, and Thor was, I think, piloting this Arachne list. And Thor and I are good friends. I think we were actually playing on Talishar. I was playing into his like new deck right before the Battle Hardened. So Thor is a very, very talented assassin player, just very, very good at the game. But basically, in this game, I think his Arachne basically had like a super early lead, just because I think I didn't see a transcend card until like turn 3 or 4 or 5, one of the two. It was like a lot later than normal. And I had some kind of like awkward hands, I think, in the beginning that I think Thor was able to capitalize on. So I think Thor had a pretty significant lead in the beginning, but once I think I transcended, I started to kind of catch back up a little bit. And this game basically went to 1v1 fatigue, where basically I think we were both out of armor, we were both out of I think life as well. I think we were both at 1. I think Thor blocked with his flick knives, or I like forced him to block with his flick knives, so that I wasn't dead at like 1, right? And this game basically went to near fatigue, where I was basically like stripping 4 cards out of his hand every turn. But I couldn't kill him was the biggest problem, because I think I was out of like real combo cards to tutor for after a certain point. I think I still had like E-strikes and like CNCs left in the deck, so I had like threats to draw into and like tigers to send, obviously, but I didn't have like a way to like completely confirm the kill. And we basically ran out of time, which is unfortunate. I think we were both playing at like a pretty reasonable pace. If anything, I might have been playing a little bit slow. But it's definitely like worth taking your time into assassin decks, just because I think that a lot of the blocking decisions are kind of like non-trivial. So yeah, it basically got to a situation where I was sending like four cards at them. They were blocking with 4 cards. I think they had like, or I think Thor had like, I want to say like 8 to 10 cards left in deck. It was a pretty small amount. Yeah, but basically after a certain point, we hit time, and it was kind of a little bit unfortunate because I think that I was basically stripping cards out of Thor's hand, but I couldn't confirm the kill, and then Thor couldn't really confirm the kill either because he was losing all 4 cards every turn. So I did want to elaborate a little bit more on this judge call. So the judge call was basically, I think we were running out of time. I was drawing. Basically, I drew 3 cards. I was trying to draw the 4th card of my deck, but I think I moved my hand in such a way where I accidentally like flashed like the 5th card. So we called over a judge, and they basically like saw the 2 cards that were on the table, and I think that there was like a little bit of back and forth about how to resolve the judge call, because I think one of the cards was chi and the other was like a tiger eye reflex or something. So I think in this situation, you basically want to be like super honest about like what happened, because I think like situations like this happen, and if your hand is like accidentally catches on one of the cards and you see it, like you should be super transparent and just say like, hey, I made a mistake, like there's a card on top, and try to work your best with the judges to try to resolve it, because you don't want to basically like ever like cheat or anything. It's important to like try to keep an honest game of Flesh and Blood and like work on like maintain your board state. So the judge call I think was that like I basically just like put a card of my opponent's choice into my hand. I think it was Chi and like Tiger Reflex. So I think Thor chose like Chi or whatever. It didn't really end up mattering, but it's important to just note that like with judge calls like these, you should try to be like as transparent as possible when trying to like resolve them as well. So that was pretty much my Swiss rounds. I think for the most part, I'm pretty happy with how I played, except for like maybe the last game where I was kind of just like hitting nerves and kind of like running out of energy. I think Thor was pretty gracious towards the end and conceded when he didn't really have to. Like he wasn't necessarily dead on board, but there wasn't really I think way for him to win at the end just because I had him in kind of a blocking pattern and he was basically relying on me bricking, which is somewhat likely, but also I was kind of like just sitting on a reactant arsenal, which he obviously didn't know about. But I think that it was definitely like a very sportsman like thing to concede in that situation. I think that if I was also in a situation where I was basically blocking blocking out with all 4 cards every turn as Zen against Arachne, I would hope that in that situation I would concede. But it's definitely like not something that he was obligated to do. So I do want to just shout out Thor because I think that situation is also just kind of tough to be in. Like basically, you're in a situation where you can't really win, but you can just hope that your opponent bricks. And it's super unlikely for Zen to brick, especially with like tempo and stuff. But like it can happen. So you're not like guaranteed to, but you're also like not guaranteed to win either. So definitely a tough spot to be in. But I appreciate kind of how he handled it. So that moves us on to top 8. And I think let me actually pull up the top 8 spread here. So I wanted to briefly kind of talk about the top 8. I've also added kind of like the seeds here, which I think Jude had this information, so I just copied it from him. But yeah, we had 3 Zens in the top 8 of Portland Battle Hardened. It was me, Jude. Jude and I were basically playing like similar lists. I think we were off by like 6 cards or something like that. So pretty identical lists that we kind of try to formulate somewhat together. I think that a lot of it came down to kind of like personal preference and what we expected the meta to be. But I don't think either of us necessarily predicted like the entire meta of Portland because I think it was very light on like Viscerize and like Enigma. Like it was very light on some of like the best decks in the format, which makes kind of for an interesting meta. We also have 2 Azaleas. One was on Death Dealer, one was on Sandscour. We also have some big names like Peter Benenzik on Syndra, and we had Majin on Verdance, and Majin ended up taking the whole thing, which is very cool. And then we also had just a random Jarl also thrown in there. So yeah, with top 8, how it works is typically you get paired like 4th and 5th, 3rd and 6th, 2nd and 7th, and 1 and 8th. But yeah, Jude and I got paired into each other. He basically got to go 2nd, which is a pretty big boon in Zenmir just because you get a lot of tempo, you get more filtering in the deck, you get like, you basically are more likely to draw Transcend and develop it earlier, which is really, really good. So Jude had like a pretty, I think, early advantage. I think our Zen matchup was actually like pretty close. I think it was like 1-2 at the end or something like that. But Jude ended up getting there. I think that I played the matchup somewhat correctly. I think that there was maybe like a pivotal point where I like went for a Sacred Art and like I blocked with all equipment on like a CNC and went for like a Sacred Art, or maybe it wasn't as efficient to do it as possible, but I'm not still 100% sure on that. Yeah, but Jude ended up getting there. So shout out to Jude. I think he also like went on to top 4. I think he lost to like the Azalea the Death Dealer Azalea. But Jude also did really well. So I'm pretty happy, I guess, with my top 8 performance. I ended up getting a Dread Scythe mat, and then I also got I think like $125 in cash coming my way. So pretty happy with my results. And again, I think that I think I'm pretty like confident with the list, and I think that I think the whole Battle Hardened as a whole was like pretty fun and went pretty well for me. So pretty happy with my result. Let's go ahead and I guess now just kind of move into talking about the list. So let's talk about the Zen list itself. And I think that this list is like pretty bland for the most part. I think the spiciest thing that we have here is Blue Flick Flack, which is kind of replacing like the blue Waxons. This card's like really, really solid for what it's worth. Just having like a blue block for is pretty good. And the breakpoints of like 2 and 5 are also like pretty annoying, especially in like the Zenmir and stuff, because if you can block like 2 on a Kakara and like 5 on like a Long Key, this card has like some kind of insane breakpoint value as well. Also being like a transcend starter is quite cool. Obviously we use out on like the wax on wax off stuff, but we're not running that anyways because we're also making rooms for some red flick flax, which I think are like pretty good right now, especially into some decks like Mario. I think it's also good into like Dio, the Mirror. Just a generally pretty solid card. And also like good into like some brutes and stuff. So yeah, the flick flacks are probably the spiciest thing about this list, but for the most part, it's just pretty stock standard Zen. We're running 28 reds, 32 blues. If we look at our combo count as well, where I think we're at like 21 combo cards, which is like pretty low. There are definitely some situations where I've like ran out of combo cards, so I could see upping like maybe on like a breed anger, or, like a pouncing key, just like make sure you don't run out of combo cards. But for the most part, I'm like pretty happy with this list. Maybe also like going up on like a blue pouncing key is also like reasonable. Pretty happy with this list. There are like a couple awkward things about this list, notably that I think I'm main decking like one blue Warmongers just as like a random blue pitch. This is for like matchups where you want to be like the aggressor. Like I think into like Enigma, you probably do have to like main deck a Warmongers. I think I also might like board in Tiger Eye or something. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, the one blue Warmongers main deck is like kind of the only like weird kind of sideboard part. But a lot of times this just will come out for like a react or something. So let's kind of like go through like some matchups. So I've actually listed out like all the matchups here for I think every single hero in the game, or at least how I think I would board into every single hero. A lot of this like evolves over time, and Zen's days are numbered anyways. So I think this is at least just a good snapshot of like how I think I would board. But again, maybe these are like debatable levels of correctness. So let's kind of talk about, I guess, some of the A and maybe some of like the B tiers as well. So into Aurora, I think this is not really super surprising to everyone. We board out like CNCs, our 2 blocks, and Warmongers, and then just run like a more kind of like defensive package. We run AB1 just to like play around like Sigil Suffering and stuff like that. But for the most part, we're just trying to like play the value game, try to get Transcend early and try to race them. Into Syndra, we're kind of doing a similar package, I think, to Aurora, except we're just not running AB. So we're doing like a very block heavy strat. And I think the Flick Flacks also kind of shine a lot in this matchup. Just because you can have like a 4 block, and then you can also block a 5 on like the last chain link if it's like a breaking point or like a Dragonfire or something. So Flick Flack continues to be very, very strong, just very, very solid card. And this package, like I think if I look at actually my results, ignore some of these results, but I'm like 3-0 into a lot of Syndras, so pretty confident into the Syndra matchup. It feels like very Zen favored, at least with this configuration. I've not had a ton of issues into Syndra. Next, let's talk about Enigma. So Enigma is actually kind of a little bit of a rough matchup. I think if they high roll you like pretty early and you kind of like brick, there's definitely like a risk that you just like lose the game on the spot. If you don't draw Chi, you also lose the game on the spot. I think there are a lot of cards that are pretty rough in this matchup, like Phantasmaclasm, bottoming Chi is like a nightmare. So I think that this matchup is like not super free. Like you definitely have to work pretty hard for this matchup. And I think a lot of the new cards make this matchup like rough. Like Shelter makes it a little bit rough. I think that the boots also make it a little bit rough, like the quick dodge flexors. I think most Enigma lists are on those, and those are sometimes pretty brutal in the Zen. So yeah, this matchup's not like super free, but like it's pretty passable, especially if you can like high roll them pretty early. So not terrible. I think it's like pretty 50-50, maybe a little bit Zen favored, but not by a ton. Next, let's talk about Mario and then Slippy. So we're pretty much running just all our reacts. I think I bored out like Cosmic and then like a random blue, just so we have some more space for reacts, more space for like Tiger Eyes. And then our 2 blocks come out, our Warmongers also come out, and we're basically just trying to play like we're basically trying to do like a value trading game where like we can block out some on hits with our reacts. We can then just like keep the Transcend flowing through the deck, and then also just kind of like race them with like Chase the Tail and stuff. So definitely a little bit more of a race matchup, but like the benefit of Mario and Slippy versus New is you just get to run levels, which is like a card that you almost never get to run like into New because it loses you the game on the spot. But like if you can just run this blue 3 block that is also just insane, it's pretty good into just like Mario and Slippy just in general. So this is why I think that I'd prefer the Mario Slippy matchup to like the New matchup, for instance, just because I think that Levels is such a strong card that like losing out on it makes a lot of your deck like super awkward. So losing out on like brick potential, I think is like what makes this matchup, I think, a lot better for Zen than like New, for instance. Notable thing about like the New versus Mario thing is you also don't have to play around Siren Skull, and that card's like bullshit. So Pretty happy that you don't have to also play around Siren's Call. But like Mario and Slippy do have some like things that are kind of like dumb, like they can pump bonds to like 15 or whatever. But like for the most part, they're not doing that. For the most part, it's just like they're doing like 0 for 7s or 0 for 5s or 0 for 6 or whatever. So not like actually that bad of a matchup, I think. Let's talk about new. So I didn't actually play any news at the Battle Hardened, but I think this is like roughly how I board. So I board out like the blue key unleash and the wind chakras, and as well as the levels. And then we're basically just keeping all the Tiger Gen in the deck, just so that like we lower our chances of bricking, and we also are able to like just output like good efficient turns and develop our chase the tails. I kind of like doing this configuration as opposed to like running the blue key unleash and then cutting the Tiger Gen, just because I think that you can do that, but it's definitely like a little bit awkward, especially if they like Sacred Art and then like if they hit like random Sacred Art in Banish and then they also are able to like get like 1 or 2 key unleash in Banish, it can become a little bit rough. But yeah, I didn't play against a ton of news, but this is like kind of like the rough configuration I run. You can maybe also like trim on like the Growls or the 100 Winds or something, but like leaving some extra cards in against CYB is also like pretty reasonable. Next, we'll talk about Prism. So I also didn't play any Prisms, but this is roughly how I board. So contradictorily, I guess Reacts are really good in Prism right now, just because most of them are on like 9 of Angelic Wraths, I think is the card. So being able to block out like a 0 for 4 pump, I think is very strong in Prism, and then also being able to like block 7 on the first Angel is very, very good. For what it's worth, I think this matchup's gotten a lot worse, especially if they're on the card that like can flip over your Banish. Because this deck doesn't have like a lot of cards that you can like instantly play out of Banish. Like you have to play like a Tiger first for a lot of these cards, so it can sometimes be a little bit of a struggle to like play around like judgment effects. So definitely a little bit scary. I think that there may be some room for improvement for the Prism matchup, like maybe bring in like some weakest links for additional poppers, or maybe just like a couple, like 1 or 2 more like 4 block reacts in general and make the matchup like a little bit better. But I don't think the Prism matchup's like actually that bad. I think the thing that makes it the worst is honestly like Angelic Wrath and then the new card from the Hunted. And Viscerai, I think, is the matchup I think I practice the most. Actually, let me go ahead and just add in Tide Flippers here. But Viscerai, I think, is the matchup I practice the most for the Battle Hardened, and there were like no Viscerais or like no Viscerais doing like super well. So the Viscerai matchup, I'm still trying to figure out like a little bit. Like I think you still need 3 Warmongers to keep like the aggro Viscerais a little bit honest. And I think that you don't need this card if you're already winning, but if you're losing, like this card can help you kind of stabilize a lot, which I think is why you kind of need 3 of, especially if Viscerai is like one of the better decks. Maybe you can like cut this for like RTNs if you don't expect a lot of Viscerai locally, but I think this card is like very, very solid. I'm still trying to figure out a little bit how to board into Viscerai. I think I like cut on like a CNC and E-Strike, which feels kind of awkward. I think that like these 2 cards feel the most awkward just around Face Purgatory, which is why I try to trim on them. But I could also see like trimming on like some other stuff, like maybe like Tiger Forming Cants. But I also just like the blue blocks. Like I'm not entirely sure what it is, but like I feel like every time I like E-Strike or CNC, I get punished by like Face Purgatory. So I'm not like a super big fan of like both of these, honestly. Maybe CNC is like a little bit better. But yeah, the Viscerai matchup I think I'm still trying to figure out. But you basically just don't want any reacts, and then I think that having like a higher than normal blue count is also quite reasonable, just to like pay into like a big rune chant turn if you really need to. Yeah, but the Viscerai matchup I didn't get to play, but I think I still need a little bit more practice, especially in like aggro Viscerais. I think the matchup is like not free, especially if you like draw poorly, which can make it a little bit harder. And then we'll talk about the Zen Mirror. So in the Zen Mirror, I basically also board in like Flicks, Sync Blows, and Tiger Eye Reflex. So we're basically at like 7 reacts. I'm not counting the blue flick in that count, just because I think blue flick you can also just use as a blue pitch, so it doesn't really, I think, factor into the react count. But I think 7 reacts is just about good, and Tiger Eye is not really a react. So like 5 reacts and then 2 Tiger Eyes, which can help block out like CNC is pretty good. In the board, we have like 1 Breed Anger, 1 Maul and Key, just to kind of like trim on a couple ratios. And then I think we also board out like Growls, Wax On, Cosmic, and Warmongers. I think this roughly makes sense, but I think you could maybe like bring in 1 or 2 of these for like something else. But I think this is roughly how I would board. Let's kind of skip over some of the more interesting matchups. So against Azalea, I think we also have like a pretty good board. I think that you could also maybe potentially like leave in the Harmony Hunt in the Cosmic over like a Tiger form if you want to like care about bricking on Warmongers. But Warmongers is, I think, like pretty good in this matchup. We also have like a decent react package. So into like Sandscour, it's a little bit more suspect, but I think into Death Dealer, like you're pretty favored unless they like high roll you pretty bad. or you like don't transcend or like don't see chi or whatever. But yeah, I've always felt pretty confident in Azalea for the most part, but you can definitely still get rolled a little bit. Next, let's talk about Dio. So I think there are actually a couple different ways you can approach the Dio matchup. I think if you know that they're on null time zone, you can maybe try to trim on like some of the cheat cards like Sacred Art, Grain, and then maybe what's the other one, like Path. I think those are the ones I like trim on the most, or maybe like trim on two of them and like bring in like some CNCs or whatever. But you can also like do like kind of this approach, which I think this is how Jude normally boards. I need to test this matchup out a little bit more, but I think that with this matchup, you're basically just trying to outvalue a flick and sync and stuff, and then like if they play out a null time zone, it's obviously pretty bad. But if they don't play out a null time zone, you're in like pretty good shape, and then you can basically just kind of like try to outvalue them, I think is the plan. You can also like pivot to fatigue at some point if they kind of run out of resources, which is definitely possible with this list, especially with like the flick flacks providing a lot of additional block value. And last, I want to kind of talk about the Kano board. So we're on null or 3 AB, which I think that if you wanted to not respect Kano, you can probably trim on a little bit of this. I expected a little bit more Kanos than normal at the Battle Hardened, just because I think that Portland is pretty wizard heavy, as we saw with like Verdance, and I think there were a decent amount of Kanos. I just don't think they converted super well. Yeah, but Kano Hate is in the sideboard. It might end up going away, but yeah. I think it's worth like 2 sideboard slots just to like not auto lose in that matchup. And then we're basically just running our like kind of aggressive 60. We still have to board in that one Warmongers just as like blue pitch, but I think like this is a pretty fine configuration. And I think that pretty much about wraps up at least my thoughts on some of the top matchups. I think that like there are a couple ones that I like kind of skipped over. So if you want to hear more about like a specific matchup, let me know and I can try to answer in the comments. I did also want to briefly mention that I've like completely updated all the matchups on this list. So I've done it for I think every single hero in the game. If I missed one in the comments, let me know. But I've also added like the turn order, the cards to cut. So if you're interested in how I board, this is basically like a snapshot of I think how I would board at a given point in time. I try to do my best effort for this list, but updating the sideboard for me at least takes about like a half hour to an hour. So it's a lot of work to update a sideboard. So hope you all appreciate it. And yeah, let me know if you see anything off. I tried to kind of spot check it as best I could, but there's definitely probably something in here that might be like off or something. So let me know if you are kind of like curious about matchups and stuff. Yeah, but I think that pretty much wraps up the Portland Battle Hardened Zen list. So pretty happy with my performance. Again, top 8 at Battle Hardened is never bad. I think it's actually the first time I've top 8'd at a Battle Hardened. I think most of my top 8s have been at like the PQ level basically. So this is I think like the first really big event that I've top 8'd, and I'm glad that I think I like put into practice to try a top 8 as well. We'll do some gameplay in a bit, but I do want to actually briefly mention my PQ list. So there was actually a sealed PQ plus, I think, on the Sunday after the Battle Hardened. So I figured I might as well join and just like get a feel for like sealed, get a feel for kind of like set in general. And I had actually kind of like a lot of fun doing the sealed. So I'm not gonna go into like my matchups or whatever, but I think I went basically like 4-2 and then bubbled it at 9th. So a little bit unfortunate there, but I also played against some pretty strong players like Peter Bedenzik, and I think that the list for the most part was like pretty good. I'll briefly kind of like just go over like some of the cards. So a lot of head jabs on this list. I think we have at least 5 head jabs here, and then another head jab here, so like 6 head jabs. I think that's pretty much the only head jabs. But yeah, these cards are just pretty solid, just being like 0 for 3, 3 blocks, and then Burning Blade Dance obviously has the on hit, which your opponent for the most part like has to block, which makes this like a pretty strong card. We also just have some like good on rate cards like our Dragon's Tail is like a 1 for 5, Blaze Headlong is a 0 for 4. We got some 1 for 4s as well, so like Sinner Skin, Dust Runner, and Demonstrate Devotion are all very, very strong. We also have a non-draconic 1 for 5 in Grow Claws, which is also quite decent, and then some more 1 for 4s with like with Magma and stuff. I think the biggest like bomb in this pool was Dual Threat. I think every time I cast this card, I basically like win the game on the spot. This card is like egregiously good in sealed, especially in like Syndra. I think it's like less good in like Arachne, especially if you don't have like the Graphene out. And it's less good, I think, in Fang, just because like Fang doesn't have like any attacks you can run except for like Blaze Headlong and then like the other like Hunty and Zerath or whatever the card is called. Yeah, but for the most part, like Dual Threat I think is like a Syndra card, unless your like Arachne list is like pretty good. But yeah, this card was like an absolute bomb. Just like won me like half the games that I casted it. And I think that this format, like, I think the cards are fun and stuff, but it does feel like it's very like die roll dependent. Like I think every matchup that I went like second in, I was just like egregiously like favored, and every matchup that I went first in, like felt like I just like was losing, kind of through no fault of my own. But I think that like the set feels pretty like die roll heavy, and I think that like it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think the set's like pretty aggressive, and I think that you definitely like have a significant disadvantage going first in a lot of matchups. I do also want to talk maybe about some of like the resource cards here. So we have like a yellow Fire 10 Strike Fist. So this is basically just like a 0 for 3 that like has weird breakpoints, which makes it like pretty good. I think like Fire 10 Strike Fist is just like very solid card in general at like blue or at yellow, blue, and red. I think that this card is just like very, very good. We're also running a blue one. The blue one is mainly for pitch. We also got like a Dragon Power, which is kind of whatever, just as a 1 for 5. But being a blue 3 block is also quite solid. Running some Grow Claws. I think this is also just like a card that if I need to finish the game with it, I can. But it's basically just blue pitch. And then we have like I think 4 blue 3 blocks. So we got Trot Along, Nip at the Heels. I think Relentless Pursuit also kind of falls in this category. So this is like pretty okay if you're going first, because you can like send dagger, play it, and then like maybe do some stuff, recur the dagger, and then like set up an arsenal or whatever. And then blue pick of the point is just like a decent like breakpoint card in the late game. If you have like an extra resource, you can do like kunai pick of the point and try to like close out the game. Yeah, so that's pretty much the sealed list. I think that this list is pretty good. We also had like a couple cards that like didn't include. I think that maybe the card that was like most on the edge for me was like For the Emperor. I could definitely see like maybe cutting like a blue or like maybe one of these Grow Wings to like bring in For the Emperor just as a 1 for 5 that blocks 3. I think this card's like pretty solid. Like the attack itself or like the effect itself doesn't really matter as much. I think it's more so just the stat line on this card's like pretty solid. We also have like Bloodline and Blood Drop, which I'm not like a super big fan of these cards, but I think that they're like okay just as like 3 blocks, but not super crazy about them. We also had I think a blue Upsticks, which this card is like okay, but it's actually got like kind of worse breakpoints than Pick Up the Point a little bit, because you're basically coming with a dagger for 3, which is pretty easy to block, whereas Pick Up the Point comes in for 1 and then 1 basically, right? Which is I think a little bit better. And then I also had a Danger Digits in the sideboard, but I think I actually prefer the Blade Blackener Gauntlets, which is a rare. Just getting like a guaranteed 2 block on this card is pretty solid, whereas Danger Digits is like also kind of like 2 value, but I think like having more block value for like on hit effects is like pretty good. So I opted for the Blade Beckoner. I think basically in every matchup. But I could definitely see that maybe being wrong. I'm not 100% sure. But that's pretty much my sealed list. I also had like some good reacts. And I did actually want to briefly mention these reacts, which ended up being kind of funny in one of the matches. So I think I was playing against Peter, I think in round 5, I think round 5 or round 6. But basically, I drew a hand with like 2 reacts. I think I like 1 react in Arsenal, and like I think I like a Loyalty Beyond the Grave in hand. And then Peter hits me with like a backstab, which was super funny because I basically had like I think I was at a low enough life total where I had to block, like because if Peter had like a pump or something, I basically just like die on the spot. So I had to block with the 2 non-react card or 2 of the non-react cards, and then I basically just did like dagger into Grow Wings on my turn, which felt terrible. Like it was probably the highest value backstab I think of all time. Just coming, I think it was coming in for 6 for some reason as well. So definitely a little bit unfortunate that I think I drew those. I think that might have been like my winning in too. So I think I lost the winning into the backstab, which is very funny. And I think Peter played it pretty well and also got a little bit lucky with that. But definitely kind of a funny story to kind of tell about the highest value I think backstab I think I've ever seen. Just being able to negate 6 value by preventing reacts is really good. Yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps up my seal discussion. Again, I got ninth place. I'm pretty happy with that. I got a bunch of prize wall tickets and then got some packs, so can't complain. Definitely not super practiced on this format. So I think this is actually like my second format that I'm not practicing that I've also gotten ninth place in. But I think the list is like pretty solid, and like I think I did pretty well for not really having a ton of like draft or sealed experience in this format, so pretty happy with my performance overall. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and just do like a quick Zen game, see if I can kind of showcase a little bit of like some of the more popular matchups, and then we'll kind of wrap it up there. All right, let's play against Verdance. I think I normally want to go first in Verdance, and then let's actually pull up the Verdance board. I think I did make it. All right, where's C tier? There she is. Okay. So I think Burton's actually won the Portland Battle Hardened, so maybe we'll play into it just for practice. But I think we just won 1AB for the Surgeon Aether type, and pretty good opening start. Notably, you can send Biting Breeze and then like Sacred Art if we want to. Problem is, I don't want to fill their graveyard super bad, so I can honestly just see like pass here, and then set up for next turn. Kind of okay with that. I think giving Verdance like pre-filtering is like not ideal. And if they want to like discard fruits here, I'm kind of like okay with that. Or Arsenal Biting Breeze just to kind of have a starter for next turn. Alright, looks like they're gonna play out Heartbeat. Sure. So gain a couple life, and then what do we have to follow up? Just a Pulsing Aether. Sure. So they gained 4 life and then also sent 4 damage. Not bad. I think we don't want to attack there just because I don't want to like fill their graveyard with 2 Earth cards and like give them free decompose. I want to make them work for it a little bit. And also like if you go first into Verdance, generally, or if you go like second in Verdance, generally they'll like send a spell at you and like fill the graveyard anyways. So I think I'm basically just taking the line that fills the least amount of graveyard. All right, let's go ahead and send in the Biting Breeze, and then we just have a Chase and Tiger Swipe, which should hopefully be pretty annoying for them to deal with. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to develop out CNC this turn, but I think that's okay. I think there's definitely maybe some merit to just going for the Sacred Art early. Oh, they're going to give us Barkskin. I think I'm kind of happy with that. Barkskin can definitely be a little bit annoying in the late game. All right, go ahead and Sacred Art, though. Get our... let's actually just start with the Tiger first. Do some good practice here. All right, now we can grab our Chase. I think we will play out this other Tiger after the Chase, just so we can turn on Swipe and then maybe force like a 4 block on that. Oh, they wanted to do. All right, we get a Channel Millennium Tree block out of them, which I think is pretty good for us. All right, send in the Tigers. Then we should be able to force a block here with the Swipe. I'm hoping that they just don't have like the 0 for 4 that they can easily cover. Like I'm hoping they have to like sacrifice like 2-3 blocks to cover this. Should be pretty good for me. All right, send in the Swipe. Right, lock in with a Plow Under. Do they have another block here, I guess is the question. So we will get 3 Tigers here, which is pretty good on hit for Tiger Swipe, coming in for 0 for 7. Pretty okay. All right, let's get our 3 additional damage. The one bad thing about Talishar is I have to play out each of these Tigers individually instead of just sending 3 Tigers on my opponent and then them taking 3. Definitely a little bit annoying to just spam Tigers at your opponent sometimes. All right, but we do at least get 9 chain links against them, which is a little bit funny. I don't love arsenaling CNC here, but is what it is. So off to a pretty good start. This hand, I think, is a little bit more mid. But we can always like bottom flick flack here and then like send CNC at them. And then maybe like Arsenal Aspector or whatever. Maybe doing something like this makes the most amount of sense. We could also Arsenal the Tiger form and like block with the Aspect instead, but Aspect Arsenal is like pretty okay, I think. Yeah, so I think we'll just do this and then CNC at them. I think Verdance lists tend to be like pretty react heavy, so CNC I think is like a pretty good threat against them a lot of the time. Especially if they have to give up like 2 attacks to block it, then they're not attacking you, which is like pretty okay. There might have also been some merit to just like popping Traverse there. What was our hand? Our hand was like blue. I guess he could have developed to Chase the Tail if he really wanted to. Yeah, it's okay. But, like the problem with so there I think that there is maybe merit to my decision there, just because I think that if you send Chase the Tail in addition to ending on CNC, it can be a little bit more awkward than uh if you just send CNC by itself. Like sending CNC by itself basically gives them no opportunity to like react from Arsenal if they have it. Which is maybe why I was leaning a little bit more towards just sending CNC as opposed to like sending Chase Aspect and then CNC. But I could definitely see like both being okay. All right, they're playing out a Rampant Growth Light from Arsenal, which I am pretty happy about. If they go for like a Storm Striders or whatever, I'm also fine with that because we just have 1 floating anyways. I kind of doubt that they're gonna do that here. So we functionally like kill their Arsenal, but they gain a life. So I'm kind of okay with this exchange. All right, go ahead and Arsenal the Aspect. All right, playing out Sigil, so gain a little bit more life. All right, seems like that CNC was actually pretty good because we ended up getting them to pitch 2 reacts to Surge and Aethertide. So you do need to be a little bit careful here. I think we are obligated to pay into this Surge and Aethertide just because they're sitting on 1 card in hand. Let's go ahead and pay, I think, with what do we want to do here? We could pay with CNC and just not send CNC at them, and then we could do like Growl, Aspect, and then Levels draw. It's pretty okay. Let's just pitch a CNC here, I guess. But yeah, CNC tends to be really good against Verdance, especially if you can just send it on a 1 card, like 2 card 6, because it doesn't give them the opportunity to like react to whatever you do before the CNC, which is quite good. All right, our hand here is pretty efficient. Let's start with the Growl. Then we can do Aspect, Kakara, Tiger, Levels, and I think that's pushing a pretty decent amount of damage. We're basically getting 0-4 into 3 into 3 into 2 into 3, something like that, basically. Okay, let's follow up with the Aspect. And I think we want to draw here just so we can find our chi. Because if we can like stuff a Plow under or like a CNC with like a double Transcend, we're in a pretty good spot. I think we've also only seen 1 chi, which has been the Sacred Art. So a lot of our draws, I think, are pretty live here. In worst case scenario, if we draw into the 1 Sacred Art we flipped, we can at least like pitch it to Zen and make a Tiger and Arsenal it. So not even that bad if we whiff on Levels draw. All right, opponent has played a 50% sure. All right, they're choosing to keep a card on the bottom. That's good info. But yeah, still sending an extra 7 damage here, and then getting a card draw is, I think, pretty good. Notably, they're on a 3-card hand, which means they could try to be bluffing Surge and Aethertide, depending on how they want to block here. I'm like maybe slightly regretting not using Traverse earlier this game, like maybe when they had that felling that was only coming in for 4. Developing a Chase when they don't have Barkskin up is like pretty good. But I think we'll have time to use Traverse later this game, hopefully. All right, so we got some more reacts here. And a lot of these Verdance lists are on like 9. I think they're on 9 reacts or even maybe even more just because like the Rootbound Carapaces. I think that CNC is like a pretty strong card in this matchup just because you do get a lot of value out of that. And we draw into a nice little Pathal Travel, which we can maybe use to either set up for a Transcend next turn, or we can just maybe do like a double Transcend if they have Disruption. But it looks like they probably don't have Disruption here, which is, I think, very, very good for us. All right, go ahead and pass. All right, so Arsenal levels, and then pass it back to them. All right, this hand plays. We can do Harmony Hunt plus Path Well Traveled, and then also develop out the Wind Chakra. Pretty good. This hand also like hides a decent amount of information. I think we do, or actually, I don't know if we can hide the information because I think we need to path will travel before we do like the Tiger and the Kakara because the Wind Chakra is going to close the chain here. So let's go ahead and just play out the path will travel now. Gain a resource and then have the Harmony come in for 1. All right, let's go ahead and now close the chain, play out the Wind Chakra. And then we will start, I think, it depends where we want to put the Kakara buff, but maybe putting the Kakara buff on the first Tiger for 4 is somewhat reasonable. I think it's actually coming in for 5 because we played out Harmony Hunt, which we would eat the Shuko buff as well. So we'll do 2 and 5, and then may just tutor for a Tiger Swipe here. Could also actually Arsenal Tiger if we want to tutor for Aspect. I wonder if that's better. Arsenaling a Tiger against Verdance seems pretty okay. Like, if they plow under, it's whatever. But I'm actually maybe liking that a little bit more than Tiger Swipe here. I think Tiger and Arsenal is kind of underrated, so I think I will actually just grab an Aspect. All right, let's go ahead and grab our Aspect, which will allow us to keep this in Arsenal, which is good. Sending an extra 6 damage here is also quite nice. Our opponent is keeping a 2-card hand, but we're kind of just beating them up. And if they go for like an attack like Plow Under or Felling or whatever, like we can use it to develop our Traverse. So we're not even that upset about it, I think. All right, this is another pretty solid hand. So they're attacking with Earth Form here. I think we probably just can kill them here and then maybe set up a Grain in Arsenal. So the question is, I guess, like, how do we want to block? And, like, do we care about embodiment? I don't know that we necessarily do. I think we'll just go for the Traverse block here and let them have the embodiment. Verdance runs a lot of attacks anyways, so, like, in most embodiments getting, like, 2. Like, I think on average it gets, like, 2 or 3 value. But I'm not that scared of Earth Form, to be honest. All right, we're at a pretty good life lead. 15 points up. We got 6-card hands, and then we can send another Chase Tail line at them, which is good. And then we'll probably also end up like E-striking maybe away like the 100 wins away, and then like Arsenaling Grain here. So let's start with Kakara. And we'll just send in some annoying breakpoints here. Make it a little bit hard for them to block and to use their embodiment. Notably, they will probably have the opportunity to block like 4 and 4 on Chase, which makes it a little bit rough, but I think it's still worth forcing them to block here. All right, so this is, how many chases have we played? This is the 3rd chase. So unless we find Preserve, this will be our last one probably. It looks like they might not have the non-attack to really get the maximum use out of this embodiment here, which I think is pretty good for us. I don't think I'm really that scared of embodiment in general. So now the question is, do we want to go off an Arsenal? I haven't seen a CNC out of our opponent yet. So it could honestly be fine to just pressure their hand and go for like 3 and 7. Problem is losing out on Transcend feels bad, but like maybe we just want to force them to have like low card hands from now on. Maybe okay with that. So if we do 5 draw, we can also force them to block with a real card as opposed to Bark Skin. We unfortunately will bottom achieve, but maybe that's actually better than going for like the 7 pump. Harmony is like a whatever arsenal target, but it's probably better than nothing. And we forced a blue Cadaver's Tilling out of hand, which they probably didn't want to block with. They maybe wanted to like pitch it or whatever. Yeah, so we're pretty set here. All right, first really awkward hand, but it's still not even really that bad. So you just play out Harmony and get like the +1 buff on Mauling, and it's probably fine. If we hit like a random aspect off the top, we're in business. Okay, we hit a Passover, which is whatever. Let's go ahead and start with Kakara. Then I think we just do 2, 3, 6, which is not great, but like we're at a pretty significant advantage here, I think. All right, looks like they maybe didn't have the resources to block there. So two potions in hand, a root bound, and then like rampant growth. Like I think that if we kind of take a look at their deck, they're definitely, it seems a little bit more spell heavy. I'm not entirely sure what list this is, but yeah, it seems kind of like pretty stock standard Verdance for the most part. I think the spiciest thing is maybe the flares here. Like I haven't seen flare in a little bit, but yeah, Verdance feels like a pretty easy matchup for me for the most part. If I can just like find chi early and also kind of like deny their graveyard stuff, which I think we did a pretty good job of that game. Yeah, so I think that's gonna be the only game for today because I spent like I think an hour or so just like talking about the list. But yeah, if anyone's curious about different kind of questions about the list, let me know. I think there's definitely some room for improvement here. Like I think I have like a couple like maybe board here cards that I might want to test. I think the biggest thing about this list is that I feel like I was a little bit light on combos, so maybe going up on like a couple pouncing keys might be worth it. But overall, I'm like pretty happy with this list. I'll probably do some more iteration on it for the RTN season, but for now, I think this is like a pretty good shell. So thank you all for watching. If you have any questions on the list or want to hear any more stories about the Battle Hardened or the PQ Plus, let me know. And yeah, we'll wrap it up there for today. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.